Some say that the budget speech has become a bit of a yawn, but watch out, the legacy of Greenspan still remains. In the National Budget Speech 2011-2012, they identified the recession. We then quickly recovered, and everybody thought we were on the road again. But gradually growth rates started to decline, and thus targets in the National Budget Speech started to decline. When we got to the National Budget Speech 2012-2013, the fundamental assumptions on growth rates were: Jill Marcus said we would go 2.8%, Lagarde of the IMF said 2.5%, and Pravin Gordhan split the difference at 2.7%, stating that the growth rate would increase to 4.2% by 2014. The first prediction that we can make for this year's National Budget Speech is that we are not going to achieve the budgeted growth rate used in the budget for 2012-2013. Latest indications are that we would do about 2.2%. So what? Well, so a lot. Oupa Magashule, the Commissioner for Inland Revenue, has pointed out to Parliament that tax increases in the glory days of Trevor Manuel were about 12% per annum. That was 4% growth and 8% inflation. Today, or since 2008, tax collections are only increasing by 8% per annum. So when we got to the 2012 actual performance, we found that VAT had fallen because of lower consumer confidence. Personal tax collections, the saviour of the Trevor Manuel era, were actually under budget at one stage during the 2012 year. Transfer duty receipts were down because of the property market, but the whole thing was covered up due to an over-collection in corporate taxes. There were also some small over-recoveries from the minor taxes, which helped a bit. And at the end of the day, on 1 April 2012, they were able to announce that they were dead on target, collecting 742 billion rand as budgeted. So they then established the 2013 budget. They hoped to get 16 billion rand more from companies, little more from dividends tax, as the rate had to be increased, but a major concession was given to retirement funds. They were kind on the fuel levy, only requesting an additional 6 billion. Then they left it to smokers, drinkers, and users of electricity to come up with another 5 billion or so. And then, of course, we get the VAT increase with inflation of approximately 19 billion rand. And finally, due to wage increases, they'll get another 33 billion rand from the man in the street. That got them a budget for 2013. The question is, are they going to make that budget? The questions to be answered on budget day is, what will happen on corporate tax collections, particularly as there has been a major loss in platinum production, that's down 29%. The Gauteng toll debacle is far from over, and that's costing National Treasury 5 billion rand a year. Smokers, drinkers, and importers will probably do their bit, and then we have to look at what happens with VAT and whether the consumer is still sulking and keeping out of the shops. And finally, will we get there on personal tax collections this year? That will probably be good news due to the record highs on the JSE. But it leaves the tax burden as follows. Personal taxpayers are footing 34% of the bill already. Corporate tax collections are down due to lower rates, a third of South African companies still being in assessed losses, and post-Marikana jitters. And then VAT collections are struggling to make budget because of reduced consumer confidence. If one looks at South Africa and the sheer number of people that we have to support, we have to get in nearly 100 billion rand extra during 2013-2014 fiscal year. My second prediction is that we are looking at an increase in personal tax rates for the 2014 fiscal year. We are going to need more money from a few taxpayers to look after the 52 billion dependents on the president. But then comes the question, who pays the tax? There might be 52 million of us, but only about 2 to 3 million pay a significant amount of tax. There is the middle band, 120,000 per annum to 400,000, where there's just over 2 million taxpayers, and then, as a rule of thumb, there are around about 400,000 taxpayers who are fortunate enough to earn over 400,000 Rand a year. If one puts this in the tax tables, what we are saying is, in the lower levels, they will probably give a fiscal drag adjustment. In the middle level, they'll give a fiscal drag adjustment, but they will try and contain it to try and get a little bit more from the middle band where there are a significant number of taxpayers. And then at the top end of the tax scale, we can expect to see an increase of the maximum rate of tax to 42%. We just don't know how they're going to package that, at what level. We'll have to wait for budget day. My third prediction is that National Treasury may well need more than a personal tax increase to make it for budget 2013-2014. A 42% tax rate would only give them 3 to 5 billion Rand extra a year. Where else can they look? When one looks at company tax rates, they're pretty much fixed. It would be a national disaster to increase the corporate tax rate above 28%. So then comes the question of other taxes on corporate profits. Last year, there was the surprise move to impose dividend tax at 15%. That wasn't to get extra money. That was simply to compensate for the lost taxes due to the concessions given to retirement funds, where they were exempted from dividend tax. The next shock move was to increase the CGT rate, 66.7% inclusion rate for companies and 33.3% for individuals. When this multiplied out, one found that we actually got an overall effective rate on capital for companies at about 32%, dividend tax included, and 13.3% for the individual taxpayer. Of course, we also increased the CGT inclusion rate for trusts to 66.6% as well, resulting in an effective rate of tax for trusts of 26.7%. There is still a huge arbitrage between capital income of trusts and the capital income of their beneficiaries. For years I have been predicting that they will do something about that. But CGT isn't as big as people make it out to be. In the 2012 year of assessment, we can see that they only collected 6.8 billion in CGT, and 5.2 billion of that was from companies. Although CGT sounds frightening, and it fails a lot of board exam candidates in the CA exams, we can see that it's not a huge number. CGT increases, although they may come, are not going to help the fiscus out of their dilemma. My fourth prediction is that capital gains tax increases may come along, but they are not going to solve the problem. They're going to have to look elsewhere. In blue, we have VAT. Why don't we just simply increase that to 16 or 17.5%? That's what they've done in the rest of the world. Well, it doesn't really help if your consumer confidence is already down the drain. And then we have to introduce the big V in tax, Vavi of Kusatu, who has given a flat no against any prospect of a VAT increase. Personal tax collections might give them something in brown up the top. Companies and VAT are not going to give them much more than an inflationary increase if they're lucky, so we have to go and look at all the other consumer taxes. Last year they increased the price of a bottle of booze by 7 Rand ex-VAT and 6 cents a beer. Don't expect any sympathy this year. The sin tax component of a packet of cigarettes is already sitting at 10 Rand 32. That will probably go to 11 Rand in the budget. And then fuel, last year they were very kind on fuel, where they gave an increase of 28 cents a litre, of which 8 cents went to the Road Accident Fund. This year they're probably going to have to go a lot more, simply because of the Gauteng fuel debacle. That has cost the National Treasury 5 billion Rand that they didn't budget for, and they're going to have to get it back. My fifth prediction is that there will be a wide range of transaction tax increases in the budget, but no VAT increase. My sixth prediction concerns Pravin Gordhan's ability to borrow. In this regard, we've got to watch out for what's going on in the Reserve Bank. A major difficulty has emerged. Jill Marcus is there to control the balance of payments current account, and if one looks at how this works, we are looking at weighing up the benefits of exports and inward investments versus outflows in imports and outward investments. Since budget 2012, we have seen a staggering increases in oil prices, about $25 a barrel over the past 6 months. The effects of the international investment deleverage, where the world's financial institutions are trying to get smaller by $5 trillion this year, and then add in post-Americana jitters. On the good side, there has been no improvement in exports and inward investment. The balance of payments current account is now right out of kilter. We had a good run between 2008 and 2011, but there hasn't been any good news in the last year. If this was Chris Stultz, the former governor of the Reserve Bank, he would say balance of payments current account out of balance, increase interest rates. Well, that hasn't happened. Interest rates are at record low levels and will probably be maintained there. Simply put, if we increase the prime overdraft rate, South Africa will go into economic chaos. As a result of not compensating for the weakness in the rand by increasing interest rates, the exchange rates have declined over the last year. Add to this the difficulty that Pravin Gordhan faces with the international rating agencies. If one analyzes out the national deficit, we can see a desperate attempt to keep South Africa's national borrowing rate at below 5% of GDP and make the commitment to reduce the borrowing rate to 3% of GDP by some stage in the future. Well, that has to keep going because we've got the simple problem of if growth rates drop and tax collections dip, then the deficit increases. And if we get a massive deficit, the national rating agencies are there to give us a downgrade. If we get a downgrade, that forces the interest rate upwards, and that causes economic devastation. In the old South Africa, the solution to difficult financial problems was simply to pass it on to the next generation. That temptation may still be there in the new South Africa, but the international rating agencies are simply not going to allow us to do it. My seventh prediction is that the debate on retirement funds is not over, not by a long way. During the course of 2012, National Treasury released various discussion papers dealing with their proposals for retirement funds, and I am expecting that we'll hear more on that in the National Budget speech. So here are my ideas in getting ready for Budget Day. Well, you can stock up on booze and cigarettes. It's not going to help you for long. Very important is to review your investment portfolio, taking into account the risks that have emerged in the economy over the last 6 months. If it is a time to reposition a portfolio to take account of this, then rather pay the lower CGT rate by taking capital gains before the end of February. However, don't leave this until the 28th of February, as we might have a very volatile market the day after the budget. Those with share options might consider exercising share options before the 28th of February. In that way, they can contain the maximum tax exposure on share options to 40%, which can be reduced to 34% by contributing 15% of the gain to a retirement annuity. The capping that will happen with retirement annuities from next year will prevent this. Making additional retirement annuity fund contributions is also an idea. And finally, it is very important to diversify risk in your investment portfolio because of the vulnerability of the rand.